Welcome, everybody. Today's office hours, we're going to be talking about harnessing some of the superpowers of Realvolve. And just want to make sure that everybody knows some of the features, even though you may not use them, at least you know that they're there, that are in some cases, very unique to Realvolve. And we want to make sure that you guys are aware of those and can use those when you do need them. And they can be very powerful as we go through them. So I'm going to take some time to explain some of these. For those that weren't here just a few seconds ago, Kendra is not with us today. She's on time off today. And we will miss her for today, but we'll have her on next week. Harnessing Realvolve superpowers. So one of the things that actually I should do an introduction for those that don't know me. My name is Mark Stepp, Chief Innovation Officer here at Realvolve. Been with the company for almost the very beginning, but been spent the last 32 years really helping real estate agents in technology in lots of different capacities. So my big thing is, helping you guys understand the why of the technology and how to use it, especially in Realvolve. So some of the things that we're going to go over today, and do not hesitate to say, hey, Mark, I don't understand that, or just turn on your mic and ask whatever question. This is the nice thing about office hours is I'm here for you guys. It's not necessarily just all presentation or anything like that. So if something doesn't quite make sense, reach out, pop up a question, and I'll see if I can answer it to the best of my abilities. So, conditional delays. So one of the things that we added in Realvolve early on, and it really stems from, again, my time prior to Realvolve, writing a software application for real estate agents and knowing the needs that you guys have. There are times, many times throughout the processes that you do, the workflows that you guys create, that you need to do something based off of something else being completed. And this is what we call a conditional delay. So a prime example of that would be maybe you've got a photography date, and maybe it's on the 25th, and 2 days after the completion of that photography date, you want to check on the photos. This is just a typical example, and you may check on, 1 day after, 2 days, whatever your situation is. But in this particular situation, we're going to say 2 days after we actually take the photos, we're going to check on them. Well, maybe on the 25th, it's just a nasty, stormy, rainy day like we had here in Missouri yesterday. And you really don't want to do photography during that period, so you need to reschedule it. Well, in some software, if you set up a kind of a day 1, day 2, day 3 type thing, you may get into a situation where you've scheduled photography on the 25th, and then 2 days later, after the 25th, it's going to automatically say, hey, check for photos. But if you didn't actually do the photos, then that checking on photos doesn't make sense. So within Realvolve, you have the capability of setting what we call a conditional delay. And what that means is that in your activity, if you look at your activity, in this case, do we have the photos back? That would be something that was done on the 27th. In this case, where we want to do something 2 days after the completion date of something. Completion date is kind of one of those special date drop down items like start date, end date, and completion date. They're not actual fields in the database. They're special type of items that says, I'm waiting on the completion of something, and that something is defined right below that, there is a time section here where you can specify what time you want to do it if it's time valued. In this case, there's not a specific time. But what we want to do is say, based up 2 days after the completion of the photography or the photos activity, which is another activity in the list, I want to assign this activity. So what that affords you is if this date, the 25th, gets scheduled to the 26th or the 27th, that any activities that have this computed date off of the completion of it, this date is not even specified. It's kind of like a to be determined type value until after this date is actually completed. So this just gives you a great way of saying, if I don't complete this on the 25th, if I complete it on the 26th or the 27th or whatever, it will reschedule, it'll schedule this activity based off of that completion date. Make sense? So that just is a really powerful piece, because now what that does is that makes sure that your calendar is not all cluttered up with things that you can't do yet. Any questions on that? Fairly straightforward, but I want to make sure that each one of these are understood. Now, you can do a similar type of thing, which I call a conditional activity notification. So similar type of thing, you've got something that is due, maybe in this case on the 12th, the transaction coordinator is going to do something and just verify that there's some documents. And in this case, it's set for 0 days after completion. I want to notify my team leader that, I want to notify my team leader that all the documents have been signed, we've received everything, or maybe it's, some other person besides the team leader, if you don't have a team leader, that you want to notify somebody of something, and you just want to send a notification. Now, there's really kind of two ways of doing this. You could set it up so that it is a checklist, and in that checklist, there is a completion action. Or you can do this where maybe it's something where, because you want to create this as a separate activity and put it in the calendar as being a completed activity, you can do it this way. So we're going to actually step through this and go through this same process. So in a activity, you need to know, who am I going to send this notification to? Since we're going to be sending a notification, SMS, an email, whatever it is, we need to know who we're going to do that with. And we've got our with field. Whenever you're looking at, and I'm going to bring up a full screen on this here in a second. Whenever you're looking at the activities definition, there is a with field. And in this case, you could select party member and say, maybe I want to send it to the buyer's agent. I'm not sure why my mouse is doing that. I want to send it to the buyer's agent, and I want to, send an SMS to that buyer's agent. I might want to send it to some other team members as well. So you could actually select the different party members if you wanted to. Or if you wanted to specify a specific contact, you could say, I want to always send some notifications to this person or one of the Realvolve users in my team. So you've got some capability of choosing which person you want. You set that up the way you need. Now, what we're doing is the same thing that we just did on the conditional, where we say we're going to do this as a computed date 0 days after the completion date of some activity, and that some activity is already in my list. You do have to have the activity that's conditional on already created. You can't create it afterwards. You have to create it first. And then any activities that are in your workflow will be in this dropdown. So you can select that as the condition. So once that's completed, that verify signed documents activity is completed, then it will calculate based off of that completion date, 0 days after completion date, which would be on that completion date. If you say 1 day after, 2 days after, you can do all that. Now, it does not make any sense to use the before option. So you shouldn't ever use before, because you can't do so many days before the completion of it, because you don't know when it completes. But in this case, we're doing 0 days after completion, which means it will actually complete. It'll assign the date to this activity as soon as this activity is complete on that same day. Then the question is what is the notification that I'm actually doing? And this is where I'm going to say it's an automatic notification. I'm going to send an SMS message itself. And the SMS template that I'm going to use is just a signed document verified. That's the title of that template. So if we look at that template, signed document verified, in this case, using it with the transaction. And what it's including is some merge fields here. It's going to look at that transactions, buyer transaction coordinator field, whoever the transaction coordinator is on that transaction, and grab the first name. So it's probably your transaction coordinator on your team, or it could be you or whoever, has verified that all documents have been signed for, and then the street address for the transaction, and then the current date. So it just sends out a quick message out to whoever you want to notify, hey, we've got all the documents, we're good to go. And it's all about making sure that you, your team members, or the people that are involved in that transaction knows things that are going on, keeping them informed. And good communication is always the best way of handling and preventing obstacles from happening. So let me, before we go any further on this one, let me show you that full screen on that. So here's the conditional notification. I just set up a quick workflow just to kind of show this. One of the things that you have to have, like I said earlier, is you have to have the activity that you're dependent on, making sure that it's complete, is identified. So here's the verified signed documents. And in this case, just an activity. I did go ahead and say, well, it's got a checklist of items in here, and you would put in as many different documents that you want to make sure are verified in your packet of things that you guys do. So if it's signed contract, disclosures, everything else that you guys put into your area for the things that you want to make sure you've got signed. Put that into the checklist. Now, again, you could, if you just want to send a quick notification itself, you could create it as an action and send out, once these are all completed, then send out the SMS. That's totally valid. But if there's a case to be said that I want an actual activity in my calendar that notifies somebody that says we have the documents, that's where this kind of superpower comes into play. So once this activity is completed, we want to do this one. We want to say, we have the signed documents is the activity. The transaction coordinator is going to do it. This is where you can specify the party member or the tagged people. If it's certain team members always get this notification, you could tag them, and whoever's tagged with that would receive it. Or if you just want to send it to a specific contact in your database, you can certainly do that. Again, you can also specify it as one of the Realvolve users. Now, to do the Realvolve user, you do have to assign it to them so that they know that they need to get that activity and it's put on their calendar. Some people just want to be able to say, hey, this date is the date that I received all my documents, or they were verified, or whatever. And there may be many other examples of those types of things that you want to do, where you just want to have an actual date on the calendar, and this can help you do that. Then you need to identify the 0 days after the completion date verification. So this is just the parts of building what I would call a verification or delayed verification type of process. And then you've got your action. Your action is, what is it that I'm going to do automatically? In this case, send that notification. It's sent automatically. It is an SMS message. And which template is it? It's the documents verified. If we go look at it, it's that same message that I was showing earlier. That all makes sense? I don't see heads nodding. I am either losing you or you don't understand something. So,
Hi,
all right.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Question. When I'm just going to ask this. When you were showing a Realvolve user, does that mean someone on your team, or does that mean someone that utilizes Realvolve on the outside?
It is somebody that's on your team. So
Okay.
in order for the assigned to field is anybody that is in your account that has a role of some sort. So you can assign roles for anybody in your account that does anything. So I mean, there's lots of different possible roles, like team lead or seller agent or whatever it is that it is. What will happen is whenever you have that as a role, whenever you start this workflow, it's going to pop up and say, hey, who is the transaction coordinator for this particular transaction? And then you can pick from your list of users in your account to be assigned as that role, or they may already be as that role if you've got them in the party member section, so it'll auto pick them for you. But in either case, if you assign to somebody else, then that with party members, you can come over here and it's going to look at whoever is selected. So if maybe we've got some users that have multiple transaction coordinators, they've got a big team and they don't necessarily know which team member is going to get it until they actually start the workflow. So you could come here and say, well, I want to base this off of whoever the assigned user is, the assigned to user, and then I want to send this message to that user. Or, agent, maybe you've got multiple buyer's agents, and so you could come here and say, well, I want to send a notification to the buyer's agent. I want to make sure it's on their calendar for this particular activity once it's complete, and then just to let them know that this was the date that it was everything was verified. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. All right. So that's pretty much the conditional one. Now, one thing that is another superpower that I like to make sure everybody's aware of is anytime besides the special dates, the start date, the end date, and the completion date. Actually, even in the completion date, it does kind of do this. But all other dates are dates that are fields in the database. So, for instance, you have a closing date in your transactions area, okay? And maybe you've set up a workflow that says, man, that's touchy. Maybe you've set up a workflow that says 2 days before my closing date, I want to send a reminder email. 1 day after, I want to send my thank you email, okay? And for whatever reason, again, we have a delay of some sort. Those never happen, right? You have a delay and something has to move. So you move the closing date to the 27th. Realvolve, because you set it up within the workflow as calculations, we auto recalculate dates for you. So if you've got a closing date and it does change, then any activities that are calculated off that closing date are automatically changed as well. So if you have an activity that was set for the 17th, the closing date was the 19th, you now have changed the closing date to the 27th. Now it's going to go back and it's going to recalculate these items that are based off of that calculated date. And that's very, very powerful. Again, some systems will just go out there and say, okay, day 1, do this, day 2, day 3, day 4, and they don't base it off of actual dates. And then if things don't go as planned, and that never happens, right? Then you have to go in there and do things manually. And with Realvolve, you don't. And this is something that's, a lot of systems do have this. Don't want to say this is unique to Realvolve, but because we have every date in the database as a field like this, the power of it is increased to an extreme because you can do the same type of calculation off of everything that is a date. Okay. One thing that is important to know is that when starting workflows, whenever you start the workflow, there could be times when you don't know that milestone date. You don't know necessarily when you start the workflow when the photography date's going to be, right? And with a recalculation possibility like this, the same thing applies. If there's no date at all, if you don't know the closing date at the time that you start something, it kind of holds it in a to be determined area that says, hey, we know we're going to have this. We know it's going to be there at some point. We just don't know when it is. But once you fill that date in, it recalculates all the other dates based off of that. And that's important to know. Once that date is known and filled in, then all other activities that are calculated off of the date will be assigned. For some of you, this may be very basic, but I want to make sure that everybody is aware of this, because we do get this question a lot and want to make sure that you guys understand it. Another superpower, and we've covered this in past office hours, but it is still a superpower in a lot of cases. A lot of other systems will have you create checklists of things, but they're actual separate activities. So, you want to get the survey, you want to get the seller's disclosure, you want to do all these things. You create separate activities in other systems as the reminder. Well, what that does is that clutters up your calendar with all kinds of activities that are really just checklist items. In Realvolve, we actually have checklist items in the activity itself, and that individual activity is not considered complete until all of the checklist items are dealt with. Okay, and whenever I say dealt with, it's either checked off or it's marked as not needed. So an example of this is we've got an activity, upload the listing documents to MLS, make sure that we've got the survey, the seller's disclosure, the lead-based paint, and the septic disclosure. Okay, so whenever this activity is started on the listing itself, it will create an activity. So here's kind of a sample of the activity. Whenever you go to complete that activity of upload listing documents to MLS, it's going to immediately pop up a checklist. So we don't have 4 separate activities like some systems would have. We have one activity, but a checklist of things for you to do to consider this activity complete. And then I can go in there and say, well, I've completed the survey, I've completed the seller's disclosure. Oh, I don't have the lead-based paint disclosure. I know I need it. I'll just leave that blank for now. But they don't have septic. They're on city sewer, so I can mark that one out. I can click on it twice, and it kind of rotates through the options of blank, checked, or not needed. And whenever you do the not needed option, it's considered dealt with. So 3 of these have been dealt with. This one's not. If I save and close, this activity is still not done. It still has the lead-based paint option to be completed. So it's going to stay on your calendar until you've dealt with that. Once you've got the lead base, you can come back in, check it in the checklist, and then this activity goes away. Any questions with that? That's pretty straightforward, but again, a good superpower to understand, because now we're not cluttering up our database with things that just aren't needed. So another superpower, which is still related to the checklist, is the ability to have merge fields. And again, we've talked about this in past office hours as well. And we've got certain trainings that you can certainly go back to and actually see more details of this. But not only can you specify, like in this one where I've specified static text, specific words that are in this checklist, but I can also specify merge fields in a checklist, and you can intermingle them. You can have some that are static and some that are merge fields. You don't have to have just all of one or the other. You can intermingle them, but I didn't want to confuse it in this example, where in this case, I want 2 merge fields. I want the photography date and the photography time. This particular activity says, hey, I want to verify what is the date and time of photography. The listing coordinator is going to do it. They'll probably make some kind of phone call with the photographer and check it, or maybe it's an email, whatever, but you want to verify in the database that you've got the right date and time in the database. Well, if you specify these as merge fields and you create this activity, it gets put onto your calendar, you go to complete that activity, whenever it comes up, it's going to show you the date and time that's in the database, if there is one. If there's not a date or time in the database for the photography, then it's going to be blank fields, but you can choose those values right here. You don't have to go back to the listing to actually put the date in. You can just put them in right here. And once you've verified that they're correct, go ahead and check them off. Now you have done the activity. You've verified that the photo, date and time is right. And then you hit save and close. That's when it will save any changes. If there was a date in there and maybe it's changed or whatever, you can make changes to this. Save and close, it saves it to the database. But at the same time, because you've checked these items off, this activity now becomes complete and you're good to go. And virtually, not every field is in the database, but virtually every field is in the database like this, so that you can create checklists of things for your assistant to do. Maybe they don't necessarily need to know all of what Realvolve does, but they just need to do certain tasks, make sure certain values are filled in. This is a great way for especially brand new assistants that don't know the software to get them to going and filling in the things that they need to be filling in. So any questions on that? Hope that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, halfway through. All right. So another superpower that you don't find in other other softwares that's out there is what we call activity grouping. Now, activity grouping, groups of activities in a workflow can be set up. You can actually have up to 20 different groups of activities. We've not seen the need to add any more. If we ever needed to, we could, but 20 is the current limit, where whenever you set up a workflow, and this is an example of a transaction workflow that Kendall does at Diggs in Glendale, California, where she has certain groups of activities in this workflow identified. There are some activities that deal with appraisal, some that deal with backup offers, some that deal with the loan process, all these different groups of things. And you may have, I don't know, 2 or 3, you may have 10 or 20 different activities that are kind of in these groups. So let's say, for instance, in this particular case, you have loan process. If you've got certain activities in your workflow that deal with the loan process, you can assign them to that group. And whenever you assign them to that group, now you've got, let's say there's 5 different activities that are dealing with the loan process. If for some reason somebody comes in with a cash deal, you don't need all those loan process activities, right? They need to be done for certain activities, but not others. In this case, they don't need to be done. So whenever you, let me back up one. I should have gone through here. Whenever you're defining your activities, this little section here is the group. This is where you can specify that, update loan approval. This is where you specify what group it's in. It can only be in one group. If it's not in a group at all, it's going to be called general. It's a kind of the default group. So what happens is whenever you go to start this workflow and you happen to know that this is a cash offer because of the contract on this, you can uncheck loan process, and any of those 5 activities, or however many there are, that are part of that group will be deselected. They're removed from this workflow. The advantage of this, and this is the big superpower on this, is that whenever you start that workflow, you don't have to have a certain workflow just for workflows that have loan processes and another workflow that doesn't have workflow processes. You can have one workflow and choose whether you need those activities or not whenever you start. So now you're maintaining less workflows than you would otherwise. Does it have a referral or not? If it doesn't have a referral, any referral activities, uncheck that, and it will remove any referral type activities. Was it a referral by, a non-agent versus an agent or whatever? And just, you can set up many different types of groups. And if it's something that conditionally happens at times, setting that group in the activity here can save you a lot of time. Now, what you do have to do is you have to identify those groups whenever you're defining the workflow in the main workflow area. You just add which groups you want to do. You click on add group, you type in the name, and if for some reason you don't want it anymore, you don't need it, you didn't use it after all, you can delete it from the list. But this way, this gives you all the workflow groups in one space as an identification. Those choices will be in your drop down for the group. And then whenever the activity list comes up, whenever you're starting the workflow, you can conditionally uncheck certain groups and keep your workflow clean, keep your calendar clean, and not worry about a lot of extra stuff that you just don't normally need. Any questions on that? Awesome. Okay, branching workflows. This is another really good superpower that helps do some automation for you conditionally. So let's say, for instance, you have a listing appointment. Whenever you go to that listing appointment, you do your listing presentation, you leave. There's one of 3 things that could have happened. They could have either said, no, I don't want to list with you right then and there. They may have not decided yet. Hey, I'm going to, we're going to discuss it, call you back. Or you walked out of there with a signed listing agreement. Okay. One of those 3 things probably happened. There could be others, but in this example, those are the 3 choices you would typically have. So whenever you go to complete this activity within Realvolve, you go to check it off, it can have multiple actions. And the action then can help you do automation. And that's what we call a branching workflow. It's going to branch to some other workflow in doing that. Okay, so here's the situation where you would set up as didn't get the listing, has not decided yet, or I got the listing. And whenever you go to complete this action in the activity itself, once this workflow started, then you can check it off. Well, because it's got actions, it's going to say, hey, what action do you want to do? In this case, they've not decided yet, so I can click on run. So then based off of that, it's going to go out there and do some kind of nurture type workflow for the next several days, recontact them, whatever it is that you typically would do if they've not decided yet. Okay, you don't want them to fall through the cracks, so you want to make sure that everything's handled. But at the same time, you don't want to add a bunch of activities to your calendar if you're not sure if it's going to happen yet. So you can do branching workflows that says, based off of the result of one workflow, I'm going to start another workflow. And starting of that workflow can be done through an action. Very powerful. So this is one that Kendra had set up that she wanted to make sure that you guys saw. So this is the same type of thing. Made contact. If you're doing this for a new lead coming in, and that lead, you've not been able to contact them yet, you've got their phone number, maybe you've got some notes, things in the checklist, and what do you want to do after completing this activity? Do you want to assign them to a long-term buyer workflow, or do you want to set them as an active buyer? Did you get hold of them and now they're an active buyer with you? So let's watch this video that Kendra put together.
I've created a branching workflow inside of my lead buyer workflow. And essentially what this has done is, remember, the lead buyer workflow is going to be a series of contact attempts to make initial contact and to vet a lead. And so in this case, I've created a workflow called lead buyer. And I'm running it because this lead has come into my wheelhouse. I've never made initial contact with them, and I'm going to spend 7 days trying to make initial contact in the hopes of getting a hold of them and moving them through my funnel or to the next step. And so in this case, I have created 2 actions in anticipation of what their next step is. One of them is going to be long-term buyer and the other is active buyer. So if I get a hold of this lead and I vet them and they tell me they're going to do something, but not for 6 months, I'd probably start them on my long-term buyer workflow so that I could continue, nurture attempts, monthly phone calls, educational emails, things like that. Whereas if I got a hold of them and they're ready to start looking at property and I'm going to be working with them, I would want to start them on active buyer workflow. So instead of having to come up here, stop this workflow, start a new workflow, I have actually incorporated these next 2 anticipated steps into my actions. So if I make this phone call, we talk, they're ready to start doing, looking at property and they're already pre-approved, I can go ahead and select this action. And if I hit run, it is going to stop this lead buyer workflow and start active buyer workflow all in one step. Or like vice versa, if I needed to start long-term buyer and stop this current workflow, I could do that by selecting this one action and hitting run. So how did I set that up? Inside of my workflow, and again, this is in lead buyer, I have added these branching workflows into each of my call steps because, again, these are 7 days of call attempts to make initial contact. And so my hopes is, or my anticipation is, in one of these phone calls, I will get a hold of them and vet them and be able to use one of those branching options. And so how I created that is inside of my call, I've created 2 actions. The first one is starting the long-term buyer workflow. So if I click here, I've said made contact, start long-term buyer workflow. Then under start and stop workflows, I have selected to start long-term buyer. And if I start long-term buyer, then I'm going to stop the current workflow that is running, which is lead buyer. I've done the same thing with this active buyer. So if I choose to run this action, it is going to start active buyer. It would start active buyer and stop lead buyer. I could put just one option here. I could put as many of these action steps as I want, essentially choosing my own path when I come to this activity and selecting whatever action is appropriate at that time.
Awesome. Any questions about that?
I've created a brand.
Do that every time. Any questions about that, guys?
I don't have any questions right now, but where do you find, this is the first time I've been on one of these. So where do you find these existing office hour videos to go back to?
That is an awesome question. Let me get you there. You can go to, you switch accounts to Realvolve here. So if you go to, let me just do it this way. I'll give you the link here, your channel.
People ask us all the time, what makes...
So if you go to our Realvolve YouTube channel, and typically I will put them in our Facebook group. The last two, because of the challenges I was having with internet and my computer, I didn't put up until today. So they are on here today, and I need to put them in our Facebook group. But you can go in under the playlists in Realvolve, and there is a Realvolve Office Hours playlist.
There we go.
And let me just throw this into chat. And then that way you guys have direct access to it. So this has all the different office hours that we've done for several months. There's almost 46 of them right now. So they have lots of great content, things that we've gone over. Some of them, we've re-hit certain topics. Maybe, merge fields, I know it's probably in there a couple different times. We get lots of questions about
Hey,
merge
Mark.
fields. Yes.
Sorry, I think Daryl and Cheryl are not muted and somebody's playing something.
Oh, I don't hear that. Okay, 1 second here. Participants. Mute everybody. Well, unmute yourself if you if you need to ask. But any of these in the office hours playlist, you can go to and watch them. Like I said, we do put them also into the Facebook group as links as well. I just didn't do it the last two weeks because of the computer problems that I was having. Didn't have access to everything in my computer. They are there now. So did that answer that?
It did. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All righty. Let's see. So that took care of that. Last week, and it is in the playlist. We did talk about the contact cross section, and in the database for dollars, I forget what the name of it. Turning your database into dollars. We talked about the things that you can do with the contact cross section. We covered it really well. Kendra did a great job at doing that. Make sure that you guys go back through that, because that one definitely has a lot of information to it. Rewatch it multiple times if you need to understand it. Basically, whenever you're getting into your dashboard, there are ways of setting up your contacts so that they will show up in your contact cross section. And knowing who to contact when is what it kind of handles, making sure that nobody falls through the cracks if you've got them set up a certain way. So even if they're not on a workflow, they can show up as a fail-safe contact cross-section that says, hey, you probably ought to contact these people because you've not contacted them within X number of days, or for whatever reason. So definitely look at the videos that we did on that. I don't really want to recover that, but it is a big superpower that is extremely powerful. And if there's any questions that you guys did have from last week that we didn't cover, I'd certainly be happy to answer. I just don't want to go over the entire thing necessarily unless I really needed to. Okay, silence means we're good. I do have a video on, and this is an older video that is on that YouTube channel that I do want to make sure that you guys are aware of about merge fields. A lot of merge fields are pretty self-explanatory as far as they're in the database for contacts, properties, or transactions, but we've got some special merge fields that I do want to make sure that you guys are aware of. So I want to make sure that we go over this video, and then we'll answer some additional questions after that. So let me start this one.
Welcome to another Realvolve training video. In this segment, we're going to talk about merge fields, basically what it is, dealing with filling in the blanks. So what is a merge field? A merge field is basically a placeholder where you put the data from your database into a template. It's usually identified by double brackets surrounded by a name of the field. The merge fields can be placed in the body of the template or in the subject line. So how does it work? As you see here, the template editor has a sample email. It has the current date merge field, the greeting merge field, and a signature. Once you go to send this email, you'll see that it fills in the blanks with the current date, who the greeting is to, in this case, Sam and Mary, and whatever you have as your signature. When adding merge fields to a template, simply type in double brackets and a keyword, which searches the merge field for any occurrence of that word. In this case, we're typing in bracket, bracket, date, and this will show any of the merge fields in the list that have the word date in them. We do have some special merge fields. Current date is one of those special fields. It doesn't come from the database, but it fills in with today's current date. In addition to the current date, there are 3 seller report merge fields and 4 checklist merge fields that are used to display bullet point lists. For the seller report merge field, you can get a combined list of all the items that the seller report tab has in it, or it could be a list of previously emailed items or the recently added items.
So this seller report, we do have some training in the office hours piece that talks about seller reports. Seller reports is another kind of superpower that a lot of people aren't aware of, but once they see that it's what it can do, they scoop it up and start using it right away. And what it does is there are multiple ways of identifying activities that you have done for your seller that you want to kind of highlight, notate, let them know about, and you put that into the seller report section of that listing. And then maybe on a daily basis, you're updating that, or every couple of days, whatever. And then maybe on Fridays, you send out your seller reports to all your sellers, and it shows them a list of everything that you did that week for them. Again, keeping you top of mind, letting them know that you've done something. And of course, in today's market, it's not as big of a deal, but houses sell so quickly at this point. But if something isn't selling great and it comes to the expiration date, at least you've got things that you've shown them that you've done. Hey, you've tried and just wasn't successful, in order to get that thing relisted under you, as opposed to them choosing some other agent. A lot of agents just don't keep the seller updated on everything that they did, and whenever it expires, it's like, well, you didn't do anything for me, and so I'm going to find somebody else that will. Well, it's not that you didn't do anything, you just didn't communicate it in a lot of cases. So that's an important one to make sure that you do.
That have not been sent yet. This gives you an easy way to update your seller by email, updating him or her on news about the items that you've done for the current property. The checklist items are used for activities that have checklists in them. You can send an update email to someone based on the checklist items in that activity. You could send an email that contains the entire list of all the checklist items, or only those that have been completed, or those that have not been completed, as well as those that are marked as not needed. If you go into the Settings My Account section, you will see the Edit Personal Information. These have special merge fields that are used within the template that identify your personal information, typically the current user, but it can also contain the primary user. Whenever you're typing in the information, only the primary user can type in the team name, service area, in business since, which is a specific year, and the years in business are calculated off of that in business since year. The signature merge field is a built-in template with the title of signature. Anytime the contents of that screen uses the word signature, it fills in with whatever's in the template called signature. So now let's do a live demonstration. So here we have a template with a title of Winter is Coming. The use with is contact. This tells me that the information is going to come from a contact record. The available list of merge fields is determined by whatever is in the use with field. If you have use with contact, only the contact fields will be used. Same for property or transaction. If it's a transaction, only the transaction fields will be displayed in the list. If I wanted to add the address to the subject of this, I could simply type in bracket, address, and it comes up with contact home address. At this point now, whenever this goes to fill in, it can use the home address of that person. I'll go ahead and save this. So in this example, we'll take Sam Smith. Click on Send an Email to display the Send an Email screen. I'm going to choose a template of Winter is Coming. It goes ahead and fills in the subject and the body of the email. If I want to preview it with Sam's information, there it is. Ready to send it? Click on the Send an Email. And it's as simple as that. If you have additional questions, visit our website or send us an email, support@realvolve.com.
Okay. So merge fields, like I said, we've got several office hours that talk about merge fields and how they are. And while merge fields are not unique to Realvolve at all, the superpower in that is we do have special merge fields that do special things. And almost every field in the database has a merge field. So you can make very customized templates for SMS, for email, for Twitter messages, whatever, to be able to send communication to other people or create content for the things that you need to create content for. And that is what is so powerful about Realvolve, is the number of fields and the types of fields that we have available. So make sure that you guys are aware of that. The next one.
Welcome to another Realvolve training video. In this segment, we're
Okay, so the next one, and we've only got a few minutes left. I really don't want to go into this one. We do have our mobile app in the App Store, both for iOS and for Android. So if you guys use one or the other, if you're not using Realvolve's mobile app, you might take a look at that. We do have several different trainings on that, and we're running out of time for this today, but you can hit the office hours of past, and we go through some great detailed information on the mobile app. Unless you've got any specific questions, I can answer. I'm going to skip the mobile app for this one just because of lack of time. Questions? Good. Okay. So what I really want to do is additional Q&A right now. Any other things that we covered today or that you've got questions on that I might be able to help with? I wanted to leave at least 5 minutes for that. We do have some chat things. Let me see what's in the chat. Okay. Can we add this Facebook group link to the scroll list? Oh, absolutely. Let me pull this up. Community. So here is the Facebook community. Let me put that in chat for you guys. There you go. Just request access. It is a private group. And you can have access to that. Actually, can we add, maybe I didn't read the whole thing. Can we add this Facebook group link to the scroll media field of Realvolve contact record? I'm not sure I understand that. I meant the YouTube page link. Oh. Craig, I'm still not sure I understand that question. As far as the YouTube page link, YouTube for, and if you want to unmute yourself, if you're on here still, yeah, Craig's on here. Certainly.
Yeah, I meant in like I have a record for you in Realvolve as contact, and under your record, there's a social media section,
Oh, okay. So,
and so I can remember to look for both of them there, and I just
absolutely. So, in the contact area under the social links, there is lots of different links for different things. There is a YouTube link here. You can put that. You could also put the Facebook group link there if you wanted to. You know, those links can go there. I also encourage people, if it's something that maybe it's a link on something that we don't have a field for or something like that. One of the things that you can do is, as a note in that record, is just paste that note in there and press enter, and it's going to put it in there as a link. But you can also click on the little pin button, and it will pin that one. So no matter what other notes that you add, it will always stay at the top. It'll pin it to the top, so you have access to it. So if it's something about this person you want to always remember or do, you can pin certain things. Maybe you want to put multiple links of things in here. Facebook group, and then maybe, and to go to the next line, you hit Shift Enter. A lot of people, it's kind of a common thing to add multiple lines of things. YouTube, and then you can put in the YouTube link, which is copy and paste. So having both of those in there allows you to have access to that. It's interesting. Anyway, that's the kind of the note possibilities that you can do there. Good question, though. What's the different colors on a contact cross section? So, whenever you look at the contact cross section, it actually does, the color scheme is red typically means these are probably some more important. It uses some AI, some machine learning stuff in the background to identify things that are probably more important to you. So if it's red, then it's a higher importance because you've got some things that are really past due or something. I mean, this is my trainer, so it's got some weird stuff on there, but I've not contacted these people in a long time, and you really need to deal with these guys. Yellow, blue, and then green, so it kind of counts them down. So red is the most important, yellow the next level, blue, and then the turquoise or green goes to the next one. Hope that makes sense. Craig says, I'll usually pin how we met that contact so I don't have to scroll. Absolutely. Great use of that. All right, guys, it is 11 o'clock. I don't see any other questions unless you want to say real quick, but Looks like we've gained some people. Actually, Jim's on here multiple times. If we do have this meeting every Wednesday, 10 o'clock Central, 11 Eastern, what's that, 8 Pacific. So on Wednesdays. So if you missed today, came in later, things, certainly check back. Otherwise, go to our office hours in our YouTube channel. There's a playlist for office hours, and you can get access to all the past. And once this one's done processing, I'll go ahead and put it up as well. Everybody have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye.